Hello, YouTube. This is the Bucket here, coming at you with another one of my military pistols. Earlier this week, I did a video on the Viz 35. It was made under Nazi occupation of Poland. This is a late war model. You can tell by the machine marks on it. We talked about that. If you like that, go ahead and check out my video on the Viz 35. But today, I'm going to be talking about the Pistol 640B, or as everybody else in the world refers to it, the Browning High Power. This gun was designed by John Moses Browning and Devon Savier. Savier was a very famous gun designer for the Fabrique Nationale, or FN as we refer to it today, manufacturing rifles, machine guns, and then worked on this and was really kind of the main designer of this, which is the first double stack single feed magazine to be used in a military firearm. It was really a game changer, and he had designed this, and it ended up getting used in what would become the Browning High Power. Now, the French military had come out and said, we want a new sidearm. The Spanish Ruby is no longer what we want to be using. And they came up with a list of features that they wanted to see. It had to be compact. It had to have a magazine capacity of 10 plus. It had to have a magazine disconnect safety. It had to be have an external hammer and a positive safety, meaning a grip safety wouldn't work. Also, they wanted it to have simple assembly and disassembly and be deadly at 50 yards, which ostensibly meant it was going to be a 9mm or higher. And they put this out there for people to submit a firearm, and FN went to John Moses Browning and said, hey, what can you make us? And Browning went back to Utah. He was looking at the different options that he had available, and unfortunately he had sold his patents to the Colt 1911 to Colt, and so he could not just adapt what he had had previously. So he ended up patenting a design in 1923, and it was a striker-fired gun. It had a 16-round mag. Savier had given to allow him to use that. And in 1926, John Moses Browning died. And Savier went to Browning's son and got the rights to be able to use the patents for the high power. And in 1928, the Colt patent ended. And so he kind of really took the same makeup that he had with the Colt 1911 and just kind of adapted it to this magazine and a couple of other features that they had. He kept working on it. In 1935, he completed it. And the French said, no, we really don't want that. We want to use something that one of our own designers comes up with, and ended up adopting the 1935A and the 1935S, which shot the 7.65 French long. And the Belgians ended up adopting this pistol. Now, World War II starts, and the Belgians get run over pretty quick. And the Germans come in, and they see this gun, and they say, yeah, we like that a lot. And ended up getting some people from WWII and some other manufacturers to come in and figure out how they're going to use the FN plant to start making firearms. And this is one of the firearms that they wanted to make. And uniquely enough, one of the first things they decided is that magazine disconnect safety's got to go. So one of the cool things about a German is you will get a mag that will drop free, and the trigger isn't nearly as bad as they are when they have that magazine disconnect safety in there. So let's talk a little bit about the firearm. So if you have, like this one is, and you really can't see, but I promise it's there, a Waffenhop mag, that means you have an original mag which will hold 13. You can now buy Metgar ones now that will fit in this gun that will shoot 15. So that is your mag capacity, plus you get one in the tube. One of the problems with the 1911 was the assembly and disassembly was kind of difficult and made it unpleasant to do. And for the common soldier, it made it to the point where you could lose pieces and then your gun wouldn't be functional. What's great about this design is it's really, really easy to assemble and to disassemble. And they got rid of the swinging link. So the swinging link was a piece that could break on a 1911, and this is the sliding barrel action that you see in pretty much all firearms to this day. And it looks a little different on this one, but it runs on the exact same principle. Now, unlike a SIG, which the lugs will actually be cut into the slide and the barrel will actually lock into the slide that way, this still has more of a traditional lug pattern that you're going to see that's going to fit inside the slide. And so that's where the lug lockup is for that short recoil action. Now, this is a really cool feature that makes installation of your spring really, really simple and lock up really tight, and which makes it really, really possible for that easy, quick assembly and disassembly. And that will lock up into the slide stop / slide release, and it will be there every single time. So if you've ever assembled a 1911 and the link isn't quite falling exactly where you want it to, this makes this gun really, really quick to assemble and to disassemble, and kind of makes it idiot proof. So you just go ahead and lock that in that second slot. Go ahead and put that in there. Now I will tell you, you can get idiot marks on these, and so you just take your time and just slowly wiggle it in there, put it into place, then take off that that lock, and then it will come right back into battery. This does have a safety that was a requirement of the French. I'll be honest with you, the usefulness of this safety leaves a lot to be desired. Now, after World War II, over 50 different militaries ended up adopting these. And so some later models will have different safeties that'll make them a little bit more useful to utilize. So you'll see those a little bit differently. On this particular model that I have here, this does have the 3 serial numbers that all match. If you look over here, there's this kind of crazy figure 8, like 45-degree angle tilted that way. That's actually a cursive B, which means this is the very, very last productions of these guns. And you can see it in the machining marks. That makes these guns a little bit more affordable. As a special education teacher who's married to a 4th grade teacher, I don't get some of the earlier ones with tangent sights that look really, really cool. I get to afford what I get to afford. What's interesting about these really late production, this is a 1944, is that these almost assuredly went to the SS. So when you think of the German military, the Wehrmacht, or the army, got the first chance at what they wanted. And so they like to standardize things. And so at the start of the war, they were using the German Lugers, the P08s. And the P38 came out in 1938, and that's how most of model numbers worked back then, is the 2-digit number was the year it was ready for production. And they produced 1 million of those things. And the Wehrmacht got what they wanted first. When you went next would be the Luftwaffe and the Kriegsmarine. But as those sidearms were not front line, they rarely got a lot of the 9mm. Most of the guns that they got were 32s. And units like the SS and the paratroopers, they kind of got whatever was left over. So guns like the Radom and guns like the high power were high quality guns that weren't ever going to be produced in the kind of numbers to be a standard issue for the Wehrmacht, but would work for those smaller units like the SS and the paratroopers. So these were both of these guns were very highly sought after by both of those groups. The mag capacity of this particular gun made it very, very good. So a paratrooper coming down, if they lost their rifle, which happened from time to time when they hit the ground, they had 13 rounds that could really provide them a lot of benefit. Or on this one, being able to decock the firearm so you could have one loaded and ready to go was very useful of this particular firearm as well. This will have 3 Waffenamps, and Waffenamps are the military acceptance. So since this is a late production gun, it will be Waffenamp 140 right here on the frame, right here on the slide, and then right here on the nose of the gun. Now, these particular firearms are known for not accepting the Waffenamps particularly well. So they're usually pretty faint. They're not usually that crisp. On this one, you also have a swastika eagle. So it's got a lot of those marks on it. And it just kind of makes it a little bit interesting and tells you a little bit on how you can date it. Now, something that I've always found kind of interesting in when you compare these two firearms. So at the start of the war, the Polish Radom had beautiful black plastic grips. And towards the end of the war, in 1944, when this one was made, they ran out of the black plastic and they ended up putting wood grips on it. The high power at the beginning of the war had wood grips. And towards the end of the war in 1944, apparently in Belgium you couldn't get wood, but you could get brown plastic. So my version here is kind of a rarer model that actually has the brown plastic grips. And these are correct and period correct for the gun, which makes it a little bit rare, a little bit different. As far as a firearm for shooting, obviously militaries across the country, across the world, have been utilizing this firearm for over 80 years. Actually, you can a lot of times pick up an Israeli police FN for not that expensive, $600, $700. It is a fun gun to shoot. I will tell you, the double stack nature just fits my hand because that's what I'm used to, but it almost feels like a 1911 width on the slide. And this gun is so fun to quick fire. I don't know what it is about the ergonomics, about the trigger. This gun, I just love to make it go pew just as many times as possible, as quickly as I can do it safely. And it's accurate. The sights are a little, again, they're military sights. They're World War II. They're not the best sights for precision shooting, but for what they were designed for, they work out great. This is an amazing piece of World War II and firearm history, and I love that I have it in my collection. Now, I'm going to get a little bit on my soapbox here, and you will see a lot of people talk about Browning high powers. Now, this is kind of one of those interesting deals where if you want to talk about this gun as the designer was a guy named Browning, then the terminology Browning high power really fits. Although it really should be called the Saïve Browning high power, because Saïve probably did a whole lot more to this firearm than Browning ever did. But FN is the manufacturer of high powers. That's who made them. Now, some very, very smart business people decided that the name Browning had a cachet to it. And so the company that you know of as Browning has never manufactured a high power. Browning was not a gun manufacturer per se. He was a gun designer, and he sold his patents to FN. He sold his patents to Colt. He actually sold one of his patents to Winchester, but that's a whole other story for another video. So if you're looking for the name Browning on the slide, you can find them, and it'll say Browning High Power on it, but it's still made by Fabrique Nationale on the same machines. So if somebody tries to upsell you and tell you that this gun's special because it's by the manufacturer of the original gun, they're lying to you. All high powers that are actually high powers were made by Fabrique Nationale. And just because they say Browning on the side does not mean it's not a Fabrique Nationale gun. So FN is an amazing manufacturer, has been making military firearms for, over 100 years. That should be good enough for anybody, and don't let somebody try to upsell you as something different. I am going to get out to the range. I know I haven't gotten to do some range reviews for you guys, so please be patient with me. I will get a range review for the Radom, for the Kongsberg, for the CMP, and for the high power. Unfortunately, in the wonderful state of Kansas, weather has not been friendly to me when I do have a day off. Unfortunately, some of those days, as it is right now, it is raining outside. So I am not going to take historical firearms out and shoot them in the rain if I can avoid it. So I want to thank each and every one of you guys. Again, if you like what you see, hit that like button. Feel free to share with a friend. If you have any questions or just comments, put them in the comment section below. And if you haven't already subscribed with The Bucket Shall Not Be Infringed, please think about doing that to support our channel. You guys have a great evening, and this is The Bucket signing off.